Hello there, my name is Mooseman, and today I will be informing you of whether you should play, wait or avoid the turn-based strategy roguelike game, Ironcast. As always, we will be looking at gameplay, visuals, value, and future potential before making a final verdict on the release version of Ironcast. Ironcast sets you in the year 1886, where French and British rivalries have once again flared up, but this time over a new power supply called Voltite. The new power has allowed technology to progress to a steampunk level, and now war is raging out due to the weapons that this new era has produced. It is up to you to stage one last defense against the French invaders in your Ironcast, the latest Voltite technology that combines the power of a tank with the versatility of a mech. Your job as a pilot of an Ironcast is to complete your mission by defeating one or multiple other French Ironcasts. This is usually accomplished by blasting your French foe to pieces, but varies depending on the specifics of the mission. Unlike traditional turn-based strategy games, Ironcast combines puzzle elements from a Match 3 style game with an RPG system along with some roguelike elements. While your Ironcast has stats and abilities based on the gear you are wearing, how effective your Ironcast is in combat is entirely dependent on how well you play the puzzle board in the middle. To gain a resource, all you have to do is simply click and drag between any of the same piece, and your resource pool will fill with the number of pieces that you manage to connect. Every turn you will be able to complete 3 moves on the board, so determining which order you want to connect pieces is essential to getting all the resources you need for your attack and defense. There are 5 basic types of resource blocks on the match board: ammo, energy, cooling, repair, and scrap. Ammo gives you the ability to perform attacks. You will need to perform attacks on your enemy to defeat any opponent which you come across. Energy gives you the ability to defend yourself. You can use energy to power your drive or shields, which both allow you to gain defensive stats to potentially negate incoming damage. Cooling is a resource required for both offense and defense, and has a significantly bigger maximum pool than the other resources. Each offensive action you take will require both ammo and cooling, and each defensive action you take will require both energy and cooling. Repairing does not require cooling and is necessary to repair broken ship systems. While the repair resource cannot repair your base health, it can get your weapons and defenses back online if your opponent takes them down. Scrap does nothing for you during the fight, but gives you bonus currency to spend after the battle. There are also overdrive and link blocks which can change up how the board gets played. Overdrive blocks boost the next skill that you activate, weapons will become more powerful, and defenses will become more effective, even past their statistical limits. Link blocks allow you to chain 2 types of blocks together in a single move. This allows you to gather more than one resource in a single move, which can be extremely helpful if you can fill multiple resource pools at once. I was initially skeptical about this kind of gameplay when I first saw Ironcast screenshots because of the fact that games with Match 3 or Match 4 puzzles usually end up being shallow or simply reskins of the same basic gameplay. Ironcast completely changed my mind the instant I began playing, as it employs a match system in a way that I've never seen before. The Match 3 game in the middle adds a huge amount of depth to what would be a very average RPG combat system. In essence, the combat system itself is very basic. You choose 1 or 2 attacks or 1 or 2 defenses and a few special abilities, but the match system in the middle gives your resources a kind of scarcity that wouldn't exist in a typical turn-based strategy. You must make and plan moves not only based on your current situation, but situations that arise once you consume a cluster of resources. Your decisions go much farther than simply attacking or defending. You must decide which resources to gain, which to use, or which to connect simply based on the possibility of getting something better to drop down. The combat system in Ironcast is simple to learn but impossible to master due to the randomness of both the missions and the layout of the match boards. Each battle you are in, you must adapt your playstyle to not only who you are fighting, but what comes up on the board. Sometimes a board will give you plenty of attack pieces, but very few or inconsistently placed energy pieces. In addition to being able to adapt to the gameplay, you must also choose your missions wisely. Your primary objective is leveling up your Ironcast for the boss that is heading into Britain, but surviving is also necessary to even fight the boss. Choosing hard level missions can be extremely rewarding, but you need to make sure it's a game mode that your Ironcast performs well in, otherwise you will simply be running to your death. There are a few different types of weapons and a few different types of defenses that you will need to employ in order to defeat your enemies. Weapons can either be energy based or projectile based, and while they do have some nuances, for the most part they act mostly the same. What is important about your weapon is whether it deals damage to one system or multiple systems. Single system weapons tend to do less damage overall, but can do more damage to one piece of an enemy Ironcast per turn. This means if you want to, for example, disable an enemy's shield system specifically, you will need to use a single system weapon. Multi-system weapons have splash damage and do more damage overall, but spread the damage out over the entire Ironcast. This allows you to do more damage to an Ironcast, but you won't be able to take down any specific systems with these weapons. Weapons with splash damage are also more susceptible to shields and can sometimes have the splash damage negated entirely by a strong shield. There is a decent variety of weapons available that move across the spectrum in terms of being completely multi-system, completely single system, or a hybrid of the two. Defense systems include shields and drives. Shields give you a flat defensive stat when activated that reduces each bullet's damage per shot. This means that weapons like machine guns or weapons with splash damage are ineffective against Ironcasts that have shields up. However, a strong single system weapon with only one shot can end up going through the shield and still do massive damage. Drives, on the other hand, allow you to dodge shots entirely. Depending on the strength of your drive, you will have a certain % chance to dodge incoming enemy fire. The drives are less reliable than shields because even a strong drive can fail, but they are useful for dodging potentially huge hits from single shot weapons. The roguelike elements I mentioned earlier are key to what makes the game challenging. Dying in Ironcast requires you to start the campaign all over again. Besides a few perks from gaining experience, nothing you gain during the last playthrough of the game will affect your next playthrough. You also never know what gear you're going to get. Sometimes you'll come across a mission that gives you a great piece of armor or weapon, while other times the missions you go on give you nothing of value at all. The game gets its replayability from this randomness, but I will say that not everybody will like this. If you are someone who enjoys games like Faster Than Light or Binding of Isaac, I can almost guarantee you will enjoy Ironcast, as the game employs the same unforgiving randomness that these games became famous for. The roguelike elements create a very hostile environment for you and your Ironcast, and sometimes it feels as though your survival in fights relies a lot more on luck than skill. While luck is inherently a huge part of any roguelike game, I do have to criticize the amount of luck that goes into the drive system specifically in Ironcast. This system gives you a % chance to dodge attacks entirely. While in theory this system could be used to counter big single shot weapons, the power of chance seems a bit too strong in the case of surviving these attacks. While I don't want to spoil too much of the game, the boss fight against Durant is nearly impossible due to the fact that you must avoid a very large number of his shots to even continue fighting against his giant Ironcast that has close to 5 times your health. The first time I fought him, I had a drive dodge around 41%, but 3 consecutive blasts that connected completely destroyed my Ironcast. I feel as though this system could have been replaced with something a little more consistent so you could better plan around your defenses actually doing something against incoming attacks instead of hoping on essentially a coin flip that you will survive. Another system that I must criticize that adds on to this problem is the repair system. Against bigger foes, disabling individual systems is vital to ensuring that you can counter the strengths of the opposing Ironcasts. However, disabling an individual system is extremely hard. So hard that by the time you actually disable the system, your opponent will almost always have a full pool of repair resource to instantly get the system running again. This makes it very hard to counter your opponent if they have a weapon that is designed to beat your defense. To improve this system, it might be a good idea to either increase the repair resource necessary to repair individual systems, or to simply keep a system disabled on the return it's repaired, to give some advantage to destroying a system while still allowing the player or AI to repair it quickly. Ironcast has created a steampunk environment that combines Victorian-era style with science fiction-powered weaponry. The theme complements the game well, and while the visuals are nothing amazing, the look of the Ironcasts and their animations are top-notch. Every hit given is satisfying, and every mistake you make will make you cringe as you see your mech catching on fire. The graphics are simple enough to where you will always know what's happening, and just complex enough to give some life to the war you're fighting in. The game is priced at $15 with an initial launch sale that brings the price down to around $10. While the game itself is pretty simple, Ironcast is by no means a game you will be playing through once. The game has a huge amount of replayability by adding additional characters and Ironcasts that have different stats and special bonuses. For more experienced players, you have the option to choose hard level missions on the map screen, but the game is already so hard, I can only imagine truly skilled players even attempting to choose those missions. I expect the average player will get at least 8 to 12 hours out of the game just beating it on their first playthrough, which is reasonable for the price of the game. While it may seem a bit short for some people, I must mention that almost every minute of the game was challenging and enjoyable, and I was constantly testing out new methods of playing the game with all the characters and Ironcast to find the best way to finally beat it. In its current state, the game only has a single player mode, and while this mode has a ton of replayability and is long enough to keep you occupied for a decent amount of time, I feel like this game could go well with a multiplayer mode. The game reminds me almost of a competitive card game like Scrolls or Hearthstone due to the strategy involved in the resource management. Even if there was just the ability to play through the campaign in a kind of hot seat style where your missions would pit you against other players instead of AI, it would be an amazing addition to an already large replayability of the game. The game was created by Dreadbit, an indie studio that is headed by Daniel Lever, who has over 8 years of experience in the gaming industry and has worked on both Little Big Planet 1 and Little Big Planet 2. While the studio itself has no other games besides Ironcast, it is possible that if the game becomes successful, some of the other goals that were posted on their Kickstarter will be added, even though the game did not reach those goals during the funding phase. Ironcast is a combination of very different genres into something that is both unique and extremely fun. The depth of combat goes beyond what a simple RPG would usually provide, using a match board as a tool to restrict bad players from progressing and reward good players from thinking out the best way to not only use the resources in their pool, but also to use the resources on the board. At $15, the game provides an adequate amount of fun and wraps it up in a steampunk style that not only is the theme of the game, but defines the abilities and the characters and the weapons that you will be using on your Ironcast. All that being said, I'm happy to give Ironcast the verdict of play. The amount of luck may frustrate you at first, but if you haven't experienced anywhere near the experience I had, you will be having almost too much fun to notice. Thank you for watching my play, wait or avoid review of Ironcast. If you would like to buy the game, a link to the Steam store page is in the description below. And if you would like to see more of my videos, like and subscribe and check out my channel where I do reviews and other gaming commentary, such as my review on City Skylines, a city builder game in which you must design your ideal city for your thousands of fully simulated citizens, or my review of Mario Party 10, the next iteration in the classic couch party game by Nintendo.